Hi, and welcome to Library Pass's booth chat at LibraryCon. We are here with Bill Campbell from Rosarium Publishing. My name is Guilherme Charles Gonzalez. I'm the Chief Content Officer at Library Pass, and Rosarium is one of our publisher partners on Comics Plus, and we are excited to learn a little bit more about the company, about Bill's background, and get into some of the titles that they have to offer that might be exciting for you and your readers to learn about. So, Bill, let's start with tell me a little bit about yourself and then lead us into the birth of Rosarium Publishing.
Well, yeah, my goodness. I don't know. Let me see. I decided to be a writer when I was 9 years old, and that really comes from my mom taking me out to Hollywood. She was making industrial films for Westinghouse. And I spent like a week in Hollywood with her, and being taken around by Duke Goldberg. You should look him up. He's a great guy. Um, and yeah, by the time I came back, I wanted to be a writer. Yeah, it's really weird. Hollywood made me want to write books because I'm contrary, even at 9. um, and then when I was in college, sister introduced me to Samuel R. Delany and Octavia Butler, and that's how I became a science fiction writer. Then I was independently publishing myself, obviously, novels. I had a fancy smancy New York agent, but I still ended up self-publishing my first 3 novels, and 2 of those ended up in academia. So the first novel, Sunshine Patriots, which is an anti-war military SF book, guy who was a PhD student in West Virginia University, he hit me up because he's writing part of his PhD dissertation on that book. It was like science fictional reactions to war. It was like Le Guin, Heinlein, Haldeman, me. And then that same year, my third book, Coontown Killing Caper, what just came out, and was being taught like 5 or 6 universities in his first year, and like nobody knew about the book at all. Nobody knew me. I was like selling the books out of the trunk of my car and going off and doing college lectures about this book. So it kind of made me realize that the problem wasn't me, as I'd been being told from the time I was 20 all the way up until from the early 90s all the way up into what was that, the 2010s. But the problem was actually publishing itself, because you can't be good enough for academia and not be good enough for a publisher. Like, that's just not
Right.
I mean, I guess that's actually the way it is, but it's not the way it should.
Right.
Right. And I just kept meeting during the Coontown tour, because I was just doing everything from literary festivals to flea markets to comic book conventions to setting up tables on the streets of Bed-Stuy, actually. And I would run into these really talented people, like John Jennings, for instance, at the time, who were not being published. And I was like, yeah, I'm not alone in this. So if the problem's publishing and I'm not alone, because nobody feels like they're that special, then somebody's got to do something about that. So that's kind of how Rosarium was born. I was just like, I didn't want other people to have to go through what I went through. That 20 years of just going like, oh, I suck, I suck, I suck. And then finding out like, oh, I might be okay at this, but still not being the package that other people wanted.
Right.
Yeah.
And this, so date-wise, your 3 novels, this predates the Amazon makes it easy for everyone to self-publish. You're doing the old school
No,
hand sell on the streets of
POD had
physical
just
copies.
like, because this was 2004 that I came, yeah, 2004 when I came out with Sunshine Patriot. So it was literally how, because POD had just started going on, but you had to go through like these fake publishing services. But I'd already known how to like lay stuff out and stuff. So I would be like, no, I just want you to like have the book available on Amazon. Like, that's all I want.
Okay.
Like, I don't want all your other services, because I can do that. And then like my
So you
brother's a
took
graphic
advantage of the
designer.
scammers who typically are trying to take advantage of the
Right, right,
writers.
right. And they're like,
Nice.
"Are you sure?" I'm like, "No, no. My brother's a graphic designer. I know how to lay out a book. Like, I'm good." because I used to work for a music trade magazine, so I knew how to lay out, like, well, I roughly knew how to lay out a book.
Right. You had the basic skills on
Yeah, yeah,
top
yeah.
of being able to write a good book.
Some people think it is. Yeah, yeah.
Do you know how those books made it into academia, or was that just
Well,
circumstance, or
well, I know how. Well, okay, so a friend of mine, his future wife was a professor at Georgia Tech. This was back when I lived in Atlanta.
Hmm,
So this was just when I first wrote, because I wrote Sunshine Patriots back in '98.
okay.
Which was funny with the science fictional reactions of war, because Sunshine Patriots ended up being part of the War on Terror part of his dissertation. I
Ah,
was like, well, I wrote that 3 years before the War on Terror started. And he's like, yeah, don't worry about it. But so she read the book and she really liked it. And so when I finally, she was one of the people who tried to convince me to self-publish, because that's what ended up happening. That people who'd read the book, um, were like, hey, there's this thing called print on demand now. Maybe you should just print it yourself and just go out there and
hmm,
do the damn thing, basically. But a friend of mine, she was a professor at Georgia Tech, and then she's just like, oh yeah, there's this professor there who's really into science fiction, who's Lisa Yazek.
okay.
So yeah, so she just gave Lisa, like, I guess an arc maybe in 2004. And then Lisa really liked it. So it wasn't until years later, because I was reading one of these early um academic books about Black science fiction, and there was like this sentence where, like, um authors are now using their Caribbean influences in science fiction, like Bill Campbell, Tobias Buckell, and Nalo Hopkinson. I was like, oh yeah, wait. I was like, wait, what? Like, wait, I'm Bill Campbell. Oh, whoa. And then I was just like, yeah. So then years later, I was just like, wait, what's happening here? Then I found out, like, she was the first person that was just sort of like showing people that book, Sunshine Patriots. Like,
Okay.
I owe her an eternal debt of gratitude, actually. And then with Coontown, I was just like, hey, these academics seem to like Sunshine Patriots. Why don't I just kind of like hit folks up and go like, hey, here's this satire that, if you like Ishmael Reed, you'll like this. And
Okay.
then, yeah, from that, like, yeah, about 5 or 6 professors just started teaching it.
Cool.
So it
All
was
right.
being taught as like contemporary American lit, like African diaspora lit. It was like being taught as like all kinds of, like, right now I think it's being taught at the University of North Texas in the forms of the novel class, which I'm kind of curious like what
Huh.
that is.
All
Like, it's
right.
like crappy novels. Bill Campbell, Sunshine Pages. Hey kiddies, this is how never to write a novel. Like, I have no idea.
No. So how did how did you go from that and putting your own work out there to deciding, hey, I'm going to do this for others?
Well, as I said, like, I was meeting people, and I was just like, well, you know, like, I'm an anti-diversity guy, but I was just like, wow, this field is insanely alabaster, right? And I'm meeting like all these brown folks who are really talented. So I was just like, somebody needs to do something about this. And I always say, like, in retrospect, like, when you have that thought, that somebody's probably you, right? Um, but then I just kind of had this idea because, as I said, I started writing science fiction in '91, and like for years and years and years, decades, I was told like there's no market for what you do. Brown folks, black folks, blah blah blah. They don't read science fiction. Nobody even knows. Did they even know that there's a thing called the future? Like all kinds of stuff, right? Like, um, but then because of social media, because of Facebook and stuff, I was looking at like all these groups, like brown folks are like, oh yeah, all these science fiction nerds. And then I was like seeing these writers pop up, and I was just like, wait a second, there's like all these brown folks in, here in the States, in Latin America, Africa, the Caribbean, Asia, in Europe, like all these folks are just like writing and all that stuff. And I was just like, somebody needs to do something about that. I was like, damn it. Does that mean that's me? So then that's how Mothership Tales from Afrofuturism was born, because like Afrofuturism was popping up too. And people were like, what is this? Why are people calling me an Afrofuturist all of a sudden? Like, what's that? And I was like, oh, this Afrofuturism is going to be a thing, right? So I was like, and I always have this theory that in artistic movements, especially in Black artistic movements, that there's like this whole, there's a 4-step process. It's classify, commodify, codify, kill, right? So like, I was like, okay, Afrofuturism is going to be a thing. And people are going to want to know what it is. And as soon as they figure out what it is, like, they're going to kill it. Like that's just how it is. It happened to the Harlem Renaissance. It happened to the Black arts movement. It has happened to tried to happen to jazz, Paul Whiteman, Paul Whiteman, king of jazz, it's like all constantly, always trying to.
Yep.
So I was just like, okay, so I want to do an anthology that introduces Afrofuturism to a lot of people, but I want it to be all over the place. I don't even want it to be all Black. I just want it to be like all brown, like, so either the author had to be brown and or the protagonist,
Okay.
which is why Lauren Bucus is in it. Like, and then I just wanted to be all over the place, because I figured that if we were good enough, that when people were looking at Afrofuturism and looking for that definition, like some people would go to Mothership, go like, what the bleep is Afrofuturism? And then they'd read it and then close it and go like, what the bleep is Afrofuturism? And I'd be like, right. Right. Yeah, we'll have the freedom to do whatever we want, because people won't be able to, like, never provide a stationary target.
Right.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
And I remember that book. I don't know about commercially, but I know critically that book was really well received.
Yeah. Sometimes years after the fact.
As is often the case. Yeah.
Yeah. And they sold it in the Smithsonian for years, and then like was it last year NPR was like, oh yeah, this was like this. They kept comparing it to like Dangerous Visions, and was just like, this was the anthology that functioned as a TOC for the future of science fiction, because of like all the people that are in it.
Right.
Because there were a lot of people who were just starting out who are famous now that were in that book. So
yeah.
And it like still like sells.
It feels like it should be an evergreen.
Yeah, it really is, because that was 2013, and yeah, 11 years later, like it's still.
So
yeah,
that came out before or after Jemison started winning all the Hugos? Because I feel like she's what a lot of people look at when they think of Afrofuturism. But so that came out right before that?
Like just before she just took off. Like everybody was already talking about her.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, because hers is the second story in that. So it starts off with like Victor Laval and then her.
Okay. Yeah, you look at it now, it definitely is a who's who. Like,
yeah,
I think your average reader who just loosely knows sci-fi knows half those names there.
Yeah, it's really bizarre.
Yeah, that's cool. All right.
Yeah.
So let's fast forward to, at what point did comics get on your radar, and how did that evolve into Rosarium's current presence in the comic space?
It was kind of there in the beginning, because as I said, like John Jennings and I met in 2012 when I was 2012 when I was doing the Coontown circuit. that sounds horrible.
Put a little explanatory comment.
The book is called Coontown Killing Caper with 3 Ks. It's a satire. So yes. but Yeah, so we met at a Black comic book convention called Onyx Con in Atlanta, and we just kind of instantly hit it off. And it was like looking at his art and stuff. I know it's kind of funny now, like, yeah, but people weren't publishing him, right?
Right.
And I'm sitting there like, this guy is like, I mean, he's a great guy. It's his birthday today, actually.
Oh,
He's a great guy. I love him to death. I mean, we talk all the time. But when we first met, we just hit it off like instantly, right? Um, and I was just like looking through his work, and I was like, wow, this is kind of crazy that this guy isn't being, and he's brilliant, like when you talk to him too. So it's kind of crazy that this guy isn't being published. And then I was just like, as I said, like I'm not special, right? And then here's this guy sitting here right here, and you're like, yeah, right here,
yep.
right? Like so, and I met some other folks too, where you're just like, no, her or him, like I'm looking at like all these different people that are just like, yeah, this is just crazy. So comics were actually always a part of it. We were always trying to be a hybrid, like
Hmm.
from the very beginning. So yeah, we did that, and a few others like Jennifer Crute and Micheline Hess, like like just from the very beginning was just always kind of, you know, comics and science fiction.
Okay.
Because
So what?
those were like the areas where one you can explore a lot more than in mundane fiction.
Right.
Um, you can be a lot more sociologically or politically or whatever exploratory in that than mundane, because you can do it without being pedantic when you give
Right.
people that remove. Um, and then as a kid, I was a comics fan, so.
Okay. So what? Let's talk about some of the, what. Give me a handful of kind of the notable title comics in particular from the Rosarium catalog. That if a librarian in particular, like, hey, I'm not that familiar with Rosarium, where should I start?
Well, the one coming out next month, which I just finished fulfilling the backer kit campaign for, is RUR, um, by Katarzyna Chupova. She's anybody who's familiar with the word robot, like RUR is an old Czech play from the author Karel Čapek. Sorry if I sound pretentious. I actually used to live in the Czech Republic, so I used to
Okay.
actually speak it.
Nothing pretentious about pronouncing words correctly.
Says you. I don't know where you're from, but I'm from America. So, um, but anyway, but no, it was an award winning, and it was really wild because the Czech publisher just hit me up, and I was like, oh well, oddly enough, I am familiar with Karel Čapek, and I am familiar with this, and Katarzyna, just absolutely talented. It's the and it won the, I can't remember, it's like the golden ribbon, like the best Czech graphic novel of whatever year that was, 2023 maybe.
Okay.
So when I looked at it and I already knew what the story was, I was just like, oh, this is brilliant. So we got it translated and it's coming out next month. That one is just absolutely fantastic. I was in Angoulême earlier this year, and how, as you're well aware, like you realize, like you already know like how limited the scope of comics is in this country. Um, but Angoulême, going there and seeing like the vast array of what's out there. Our tagline is introducing the world to itself since 2013.
Mhm.
So, and this was just one of those examples where you're just like, oh my goodness, like stylistically, just like the themes wise, and just the approach. You're just like, okay, this kind of helps do that.
Right.
Because of my background, like I am somewhat familiar with Czech literature, so like I felt at home. But the recent one, Silk Cotton, from Guyana. Colleen Douglas, the writer, has a PhD in Caribbean folklore, so, and I'm half Jamaican, so So that one and Jesus Gone, the artist, is just absolutely fantastic. So that was like another one of those introducing the world to itself kind of things that I just
Colleen's actually on a panel at LibraryCon, so definitely check that session out.
yeah, with Tanana Reeve do like an old bud. So yeah, I was like looking at that panel. I was like, "Oh, I need to go check that one out. That'll be great." But other than that, yeah, I mean, there's just so many like Little Red Fish. It's like the reimagining of the Iranian Revolution. Box of Bones, like 1 and 2, yeah, with John Jennings and Aize Jama Everett, and just like this whole cast of different artists. I mean, that's like Hellraiser meets Black History.
Hmm.
So not only does
Okay,
it like
that's a pitch.
yeah, I mean, for some it's a happy ending, but we'll get into that. Just like so many things in life, it's all a matter of perspective, really. Yeah, but that was absolutely fantastic. And we actually sold that one to Warner Brothers TV, which is kind of crazy.
Oh,
And
nice.
then John's only solo thing was Blue Hand Mojo, which is we call it like a hoodoo noir. 1930 Chicago, private eye sells a soul to the devil and stuff. But that's because everybody knows him for Octavia Butler's Kindred and Parable of the Sower, and then I
Yep.
guess he wrote like adapted Nettie's After the Rain. But like the one solo project that he has now, that he's always had, was Blue Hand Mojo, and like I really want people to look at that, because you see, like, as a writer and as an artist, like he's a consummate creative, you know.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm only
So
familiar with his writing. I haven't seen. I'll have to look that one up.
right, because Blue Hand Mojo came out right after Kindred. So like Kindred
Ah,
like took up like all the oxygen. They're like, yeah, if we're gonna talk about John Jennings, we're not gonna talk about like Rosarium. I don't even know how to pronounce that. Like we're gonna but we actually sold that one to Disney. So like it's
oh
just,
wow.
yeah. So there's stuff like that. I mean, I've done a couple myself, but yeah, those are the ones that I would definitely.
Mm.
Susie Sampson's fun too, but yeah.
So what is your roughly what's your average annual list look like for comics? Like how many are you putting out?
Huh. Well, I don't know if you know, but we came out with like a dozen, maybe 13 titles in 2 years, or we as in I. So so I'm taking a little
It's a
break
lot in a
from
short
it.
period for a
Huh?
small publisher. I said that's a lot in a short period for a small publisher.
Yeah, especially when that small publisher is one person.
A
Yeah,
staff of one.
yeah. It's kind of insane. Um, so yeah, so we're kind of taking a I am taking a break for a minute. Um, so like next year, like we have like the Adventures of Lion Man coming out in the spring. And I don't know if you're familiar with Lion Man, but he's like one of the first black superheroes ever.
Oh no.
Um, yeah, he was in that All Negroes comics.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So because they're public domain, we're just kind of reinterpreting it. So
Huh.
John and David Brame did a couple of stories, and Yvette Lisa Ndlovu, who just did that Drinking in Graveyard Well. She's a young Zimbabwean writer. She and I co-wrote a sort of like a Lion Man as a Bondian character, sort of like
Okay.
thing. And yeah, then I think we're adding something from Damien Duffy with another public domain character in it. We're thinking of actually making like the Adventures of Lion Man like an ongoing series, sort of like making
Oh,
it a
that's cool.
serial. Just
You
kind
guys
of
don't
messing.
do periodicals, right? You're all
Yeah,
original.
yeah, no, these are all graphic novels, right?
Okay.
So yeah, we're thinking about doing that and just inviting other people to, because there's a few other writers and artists like, ooh, I'll mess with that.
Okay.
And just kind of messing around with that. But I'm gonna guess probably like three, like when I start ramping up again in fall of 2025, probably about 3, maybe 4 a year, because we do a bunch of science fiction stuff too.
Right. And you
So
still are writing your own work as well.
I am. That's part of the reason that I'm taking a break. Like I'm actually my wife gave me permission to go to Mexico for 3 weeks.
Oh,
So I
nice.
decided that since she was being so nice, I'll just make it 10 days. But but because I was like, really? How about 3 months? No, I'm just kidding. Like, um, so yeah, so there's gonna be a little bit of writing going on down there too. Because yeah,
Nice.
I do sneak in. Like I would like to get back to writing novels, but I do write, because I didn't write for the longest time when I started Rosarium, and
Hmm.
then it was kind of messing with my head. Um, because you
It's
do it
tough to
for
wear both
because
hats.
what was that?
So it's tough to wear both hats.
Well, it was sort of like because I mean, I became a publisher for other people, right? Like, and I think it's good to like, and it's insanely fulfilling to live for something larger than yourself, right? So when people, and we've had a bunch of people plucked from us, right? And we've had a bunch of people who've been associated with us go on to bigger things, and that's great.
Right.
And I love it. Like I like when I see them shine, I'm like, you know, I'm glad I could help, right? Because that's why I did it. But every once in a while, you're just like, not that I want to make it. Like I don't really care. But because well, I mean, it's a brag, but pretty much everything I write ends up in academia, right? So like I kind of know that like I have a legacy,
Right.
right? Um, so in a lot of ways, like all the other stuff doesn't really matter. Um, but I do still have like this thirst for creativity. And like if you don't get that out, like after a while, it just kind of messes with you. So that's how Bad Mothers came about, and then like Refuge, and then the day the Klan came to town was like a little side project that ended up being like the most popular thing I've done, which actually changed local history, which was really bizarre.
Huh.
Well, because the Klan riot, because that was my hometown.
Oh, okay.
And this was back when Irish, Southern, Eastern Europeans weren't white. So when they became white, it was a town secret.
Hmm.
So I grew up there never knowing about the Klan riot. And all my friends, like everybody grew up there and just never heard about it.
Oh, wow.
But then the book came out, and because of the hubbub around it, yeah, last year the town celebrated the centennial. And like the
Wow.
Heinz
Okay.
History Center paid for me and Bijan, the artist, to come up there. And now the town claims it. Now they're trying to document it. Now they're trying to like feature it. Like on the wiki page now, Wikipedia
Huh.
page, they're like, we fought the Klan. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So
It's an impact. Adds to
yeah,
the
but it's
legacy.
kind of weird because I just kind of did it for pardon my French, shits and giggles. Yeah, you can Google translate that one. But yeah, and like it turned into like this whole other thing. Like I actually spoke at like an Italian/Italian American academic conference over the book. Like I was just like, oh, okay. Yeah, they're like
Cool.
teaching it in West Virginia. They're teaching it alongside mouse, and you're like, what? Wow,
Oh, wow.
what did I do? Like that's why. So
Found the right story. That's cool.
yeah, well, it's a really interesting story. So you know, but
Nice.
oddly enough, Rosarium didn't publish that
Right. Is
one.
that PM Press?
Yeah,
Okay, I was going to say that. I know we've featured it recently, but I don't associate it with Rosarium. So PM Press also a partner of ours on Comics Plus. So you can look for that book, even though it's not published by Rosarium. We have
yeah,
it and help Bill out, add to Bill's legacy.
yeah. I just kind of wanted to like, yeah. BJ said like, why don't we just send it to PM Press? Because I was going to publish it, and I was just like, ah, like not being in charge for once. That'd be nice. And then when we hit them up, they're like, "Are you wait? What? You just what? You want us to publish this? Yeah, of course." And I was like, "Whoa, thank you."
Nice.
Like, yeah, yeah, I love them. Like they're insanely easy to work with, and
Yeah, they're a recent addition. We like what they've
yeah,
brought to the collection.
and they sell your books. Like they go around the world trying to sell your stuff. So I got to admire that, obviously,
Nice.
since I do the same. except they
Right.
actually have people doing it.
It's not just one person.
Yeah, it's not one person in his hybrid Toyota RAV4. Okay.
All right. So let's wrap this up. The one last thing. So tell us a little bit about when it comes to Rosarium, where do schools and libraries fit into your kind of plans, your ideal, what audiences do you think you're reaching that way?
Well, obviously, I mean, libraries always have like, that soft spot in your heart, right? Like, because especially when I was really young, I was growing up in like mining towns in, western Pennsylvania, southwestern Pennsylvania. So like my mom would like drive into like Pittsburgh, Oakland just to go to the Carnegie Library, and you'd have like halls of books, right? Like, and then as a poor writer, especially in your early 20s and stuff, like libraries is just like where you can like get all the stuff, right? Like you're not going to the bookstore and buying tons of books, like you're
No,
just,
if you even have a bookstore to go to.
yeah. You're like, hey, I'm trying to get my ramen. Like, so unless you're selling the book for like 25 cents. Anyway, so yeah, as I said, like before, you know, our tagline is introducing the world to itself since 2013, right? And that's very much the mission, right? Like we very much want to show that there are like over 8 billion people on the planet, and like they all have their different literary traditions. And while we only focus on comics and science fiction, I think that obviously it just introduces different perspectives. So obviously, like being in libraries and schools are something that I find integral to what we do, right? And especially when you look at like the changing demographics of this country, like I'm a kid of an immigrant. um a lot of my friends are immigrants or children of immigrants, and et cetera, et cetera. And then being from Pittsburgh, I grew up with people whose grandparents are immigrants. Like the world has always been a part of my focus and all that stuff. So I really think that it's important that everybody kind of exposes themselves to the other 8 billion people. Billion. Like,
Yeah, that's important.
yeah. So yeah, I think that libraries are integral. Like I wish we did more stuff for kids, but it's just really hard to find people to do it. And then it's just like so competitive. Like we did try looking ahead a middle grade thing, and the press and stuff were like, yeah, you don't do middle grade stuff. And you're like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, so
Well, those younger readers need books to age into as they so Rosarium will be there for them when they get a little
yeah,
older.
I mean, there's some stuff that like, teens or, some of the things like little red fish or little blackfish that they can read. But
Right.
yeah, most of our stuff is definitely for adults, but high school and stuff, like, yeah,
Yeah.
most of the things that we do are totally fine for them. But yeah, I think that since that is such a huge part of what we are, that I think that a lot of these institutions can find common ground in it, especially because you're getting it from a non-corporate perspective. You're getting it from somebody who's like from these places, or people who are from these places, not people with notions of what these places are,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I think, generally speaking, fits into libraries' missions of kind of giving people access to a wide variety of books. And I think what you guys are doing at Rosarium are a great addition to the marketplace in general and to, we believe, library collections overall. So thanks again, Bill Campbell from Rosarium Publishing. The comics and graphic novels are available on Comics Plus. Their novels and other publications are available at retailers and libraries near you, so check them out. We'll have some information here in our booth you can download to learn a bit more about them. Your website, rosariumpublishing.com.
That's it.
Correct. All right. Check them out there. And thanks again, Bill. Appreciate taking the time, and we'll
Thank
talk
you,
to you
Gee.
soon.
All right. Have a good one.
All right, take care.